The morning sky over Seoul turned dark. 3 massive shapes appeared above the clouds. Each one was as big as a small moon. Their shadows covered entire cities. People stopped on the streets and stared upward. Cars came to a halt. The objects were ships, but unlike anything humans had ever built. Admiral Kwon Dae stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Force. She was 58 years old with gray hair pulled back tight. Her uniform was clean and pressed. She had seen many battles in her life, but nothing like this. The screens around her showed the 3 alien vessels hovering in orbit. They were not attacking. They were waiting. A young officer ran up to her. His face was pale. He said the aliens were sending a message. Kwon nodded and told him to put it on the main screen. The image changed. A creature appeared. It had gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern. Its mouth did not move, but words came through in perfect English. The creature said it spoke for the Galactic Coalition. The Coalition was a union of 847 species. They had ruled the galaxy for 12 million years. Earth had been watched for 3 decades. Humanity had spread to 37 star systems without permission. This was against cosmic law. The creature's voice was calm but cold. The message was simple. Humanity had 30 days to submit to Coalition authority. All human warships must be destroyed. All colonies must be abandoned. Earth's population would be reduced to 5 billion. No new technology could be developed without Coalition approval. Humans would become servants to the elder races. If humanity refused, the Coalition would destroy every human world. Every city would burn. Every colony would be erased. The species would be eliminated. The creature said this without emotion, as if discussing the weather. Then the screen went dark. Kwon stood silent for a moment. Around her, officers began talking all at once. Some were afraid. Others were angry. She raised her hand and everyone became quiet. She told them to call an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. Every leader needed to hear this message. 6 hours later, the council met in an underground bunker beneath Geneva. General Hyunwoo Nam sat at the head of the table. He was 64 years old and had led Earth's military for 10 years. Next to him was Ambassador Jiho Choi, a thin man with white hair who had spent decades studying alien cultures. Around the table sat presidents, generals, and scientists from every nation on Earth. They watched the alien message 3 times. When it finished, nobody spoke. Finally, the president of the African Union stood up. She said they should consider surrender. The Coalition had been in space for millions of years. Earth had faster-than-light travel for only 50 years. Fighting was suicide, others agreed. The European Chancellor said submission meant survival. The Coalition would control them, but humans would still exist. In 1,000 years, maybe 10,000, humanity might earn its freedom. It was better than extinction. Admiral Kwon listened to them all. Then she stood up. Her voice was quiet, but everyone heard every word. She said surrender meant the end of everything that made humans special. The Coalition would control their thoughts, their births, their deaths. Humans would become cattle. She would rather die free than live on her knees. Ambassador Jiho spoke next. He said the Coalition was not as strong as it appeared. For 12 million years, they had ruled through fear. Most species in the Coalition were slaves themselves. They obeyed because they believed resistance was impossible. If Earth fought back, it might inspire others to rebel. A scientist named Dr. Minho Park stood up. He was 42 years old with dark circles under his eyes. He had been working on a secret project called Prometheus. It was a weapon based on quantum physics. The weapon could pass through any shield and destroy matter at the atomic level. It was dangerous and experimental, but it might work against Coalition ships. General Nam asked how many weapons they had. Minho said they had built 12. Each one required a ship to carry it. The ship carrying the weapon would be destroyed when it activated. It was a suicide mission, but one weapon could destroy dozens of enemy vessels. Kwon revealed another secret. For 5 years, Earth had been building warships in hidden factories inside asteroids. The Coalition knew about Earth's official fleet of 200 ships. They did not know about the 600 hidden vessels. It was still not enough to win a direct battle, but it gave them a chance. The debate continued for hours. Some leaders wanted to surrender. Others wanted to fight. The president of South America suggested negotiation. Maybe they could bargain for better terms. Ambassador Jiho shook his head. The Coalition did not negotiate with lesser species. It was submit or die. Finally, General Nam called for a vote. 23 leaders voted to resist. 18 voted to surrender. It was close, but the decision was made. Earth would refuse the coalition's demand. They would fight for their freedom, even if it meant the end of humanity. General Nam looked around the table. His face was tired. He said they were about to do something no species had done in millions of years. They were going to tell the rulers of the galaxy that humanity would not bow. Every person in this room might die because of this choice. Their children might die. Their world might burn. But they would die as free people. Ambassador Jiho was chosen to deliver Earth's response. He prepared a message to broadcast on all frequencies. The message would reach every coalition vessel and every world in their empire. Humanity wanted everyone to hear their answer. The next day, Jiho stood before cameras. Behind him was the flag of United Earth, blue and green with white stars. He wore formal robes. His hands were steady. He began speaking. He said humanity had received the coalition's ultimatum. Earth understood the consequences of refusal. Humanity had considered submission carefully. After much thought, Earth had made its decision. Jiho paused. Across the galaxy, billions of beings listened. In the command centers of coalition warships, alien officers waited for Earth's surrender. On 1,000 enslaved worlds, oppressed species hoped for something different. Then Jiho spoke the words that would change galactic history. He said humanity respectfully declined the coalition's offer. Earth would remain free. Humans would govern themselves. They would accept no masters. If the coalition wished to take Earth's freedom, they would have to kill every human alive. And humans would take many coalition warriors with them. He said humanity extended its hand in friendship to all species who desired freedom. But to those who demanded submission, Earth had only one word: no. The message ended. Jiho stepped away from the cameras. He looked older than he had that morning. Admiral Kwan stood beside him. She put her hand on his shoulder. She said he had done well. Now they would see if courage was enough to stand against an empire 12 million years old. In orbit, the 3 massive alien ships received the message. They did not respond. They simply stayed in position, watching and waiting. But across the galaxy, the coalition's command centers erupted in confusion and anger. Never in recorded history had a lesser species refused them. On Earth, people gathered in city squares to watch the broadcast. When Jiho said no to the coalition, millions of humans cheered. They knew war was coming. They knew many would die. But for this one moment, humanity was united in defiance. They had chosen freedom over safety. They had chosen to fight rather than kneel. Whatever came next, they would face it standing. 100 alien warships appeared at the edge of the solar system. They moved in perfect formation like fish swimming together. Their hulls were dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Each ship was 3 times larger than Earth's biggest battleship. Admiral Kwan watched them approach on her command screen. She stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiance, Earth's largest warship. Around her, officers worked at their stations. Nobody spoke. They all knew what was coming. The coalition fleet was moving straight toward Earth, ignoring the human colonies on Mars and the outer planets. They wanted to crush humanity's heart. Kwan activated the hidden defense systems. All across the solar system, weapons platforms came online. They had been built inside asteroids and beneath the surface of moons. For 5 years, Earth had prepared for this moment. The coalition thought they were attacking a weak, unprepared species. They were about to learn differently. The first surprise came when the alien fleet passed Jupiter. Automated railguns opened fire from hidden positions on the gas giant's moons. Solid metal slugs, each one weighing 10 tons, shot through space at incredible speed. The coalition's shields stopped most of them, but 3 alien ships were hit before they could adjust. Their shields flickered and died. Secondary explosions rippled across their hulls. The coalition fleet slowed down. They had expected no resistance. Now they moved more carefully, scanning for hidden threats. This gave Earth time to move their mobile forces into position. 600 human warships emerged from behind the moon. They had been waiting, engines cold and quiet. Now they lit up like stars and accelerated toward the enemy. Captain Yuna Song commanded the destroyer Indomitable. She was 31 years old and the youngest ship commander in the fleet. Her crew called her the Tiger because she never backed down from a fight. She looked at the massive alien fleet on her screen and smiled. Her executive officer asked if she was crazy. Yuna said probably. then gave the order to attack. 30 human destroyers followed Indomitable straight at the coalition formation. The aliens expected them to stop and fire from a distance. Instead, Una pushed her engines to maximum. Her ship shook as it accelerated past safety limits. The other captains followed her lead. They drove straight into the enemy fleet like spears. At the last second, Una gave another order. Her ship released its payload. Thousands of small metal rods shot forward. Each rod was simple, just heavy metal moving very fast. The Coalition's advanced shields were designed to stop energy weapons and missiles. They were not ready for primitive kinetic weapons traveling at 30% of light speed. The rods punched through shields like they were paper. They tore through alien hulls, ripping massive holes in the warships. 12 Coalition cruisers lost power and began drifting. 3 more exploded as their reactors were breached. The aliens had never seen such a brutal direct attack. They scattered in confusion, but the tactic was expensive. A plasma beam caught Indomitable as it tried to escape. The blast tore through the ship's rear section. Half the crew died instantly. Una was thrown against her chair. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. Her executive officer was dead, his station destroyed. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the ship. Una forced herself to focus. She ordered emergency power to the engines. The Indomitable limped away from the battle, leaving a trail of debris. 9 other human destroyers were not so lucky. They were caught by Coalition fire and destroyed. But their sacrifice had worked. The alien fleet stopped advancing and pulled back to regroup. Admiral Kwan used this pause to spring her second surprise. A small human ship had been drifting in space, pretending to be wreckage. It had no weapons, no shields, just a single device in its cargo bay. Dr. Minho Park had designed the device. He called it Prometheus. Nobody fully understood how it worked, only that it did. The ship's pilot was a volunteer named Tae-young. He had said goodbye to his wife and children that morning. He knew he would not return. Now he aimed his damaged ship at the center of the Coalition formation. His hands were steady as he entered the activation code. He thought of his daughter's smile. Then he pressed the button. The Prometheus device created a sphere of impossible space. Inside this sphere, the normal rules of physics stopped working. Matter existed in multiple states at once. Solid metal became both solid and liquid and gas. Coalition ships found their hulls both intact and broken. Their systems were both working and failed. The effect lasted only 90 seconds, but that was enough. 37 alien warships simply came apart. Their hulls crumbled like paper. Their reactors died. Their crews had no time to escape. When the quantum field collapsed, nothing remained but expanding clouds of debris. The rest of the Coalition fleet, shocked and terrified, retreated to the edge of the solar system. On Earth, people watched the battle on their screens. When the alien fleet withdrew, cities erupted in celebration. But in the command center, Admiral Kwan did not celebrate. She looked at the casualty reports. 300 human ships damaged, 47 destroyed, over 10,000 dead, and they had only fought a small part of the Coalition's strength. Dr. Minho sat in his laboratory with his head in his hands. The Prometheus weapon had worked perfectly. It had saved Earth, but Tae-young was dead along with 10,000 other people. Minho had created this weapon. He had known people would die using it. But knowing and seeing were different things. He felt sick. Captain Una was taken to the medical bay. Doctors worked on her injuries while she insisted on staying conscious. She needed to know the battle results. When a nurse told her they had won, Una closed her eyes. They had won this fight. But the war was just beginning. The Coalition would send more ships. Many more. That night, General Nam gave a speech to Earth's population. He stood before cameras, his uniform showing signs of the long day. He said humanity had proven it could fight. Earth's warriors were brave and clever. But this was only the first battle. The Coalition ruled 847 species. They had billions of ships and trillions of soldiers. Earth's victory today was important, but it was not the end. He told people to prepare for hardship. There would be more battles, more deaths. Resources would be rationed. Every person must be ready to sacrifice, but if they stood together, if they refused to give up, they might survive. They might even win. The choice to fight was made. Now they must see it through. Across the galaxy, the Coalition's leaders gathered in emergency council, the grand chamber on their capital world, filled with representatives from hundreds of species. They watched recordings of the battle, They saw their mighty warships destroyed by primitives. They saw their fleet retreat. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The Vortan commander demanded immediate action. He wanted to gather every ship in the coalition and crush Earth completely. Other voices argued against genocide. Humanity had shown advanced technology. Their quantum weapon was unlike anything the coalition possessed. If they destroyed Earth, they would lose the chance to study and control that technology. After hours of debate, the council reached a decision. They would send an overwhelming force to Earth, not to destroy but to conquer. They would capture human scientists and technology. They would break humanity's will to resist, and they would make an example of Earth that would echo across the galaxy for millions of years. No species would ever dare to refuse them again. Orders went out across coalition space. Fleets from 100 sectors were redirected toward Earth. Supply chains were mobilized. Troop carriers were loaded with soldiers. The coalition was preparing for total war. They would surround Earth and cut it off from all resources. They would starve humanity into submission. Ambassador Jiho received these reports from his network of contacts. Sympathetic species within the coalition secretly sent information to Earth. He read the intelligence with growing concern. The force being assembled was massive. 2,000 warships at minimum, maybe more. Earth's hidden fleet would not be enough to stop them. He brought the reports to Admiral Kwan. They stood together looking at the tactical displays. The coalition fleet would arrive in 3 weeks. Earth had that long to prepare for a siege. Kwan asked Jiho if his contacts could help. He said some would try, but most were too afraid. The coalition's control ran deep. Breaking it would require something dramatic. Kwan looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an armada was coming to destroy everything she loved. Her planet. Her people. Her daughter was still out there somewhere, taken prisoner years ago. If Earth fell, she would never see her again. But Kwan had made her choice. She would fight until her last breath. And she would make the coalition pay dearly for every. The coalition armada arrived like a dark cloud. 2,000 warships surrounded the solar system in a perfect sphere. Every approach to Earth was blocked. Every route in or out was sealed. They did not attack. They simply waited. The message was clear. Humanity would be starved into submission. Admiral Kwan studied the blockade from her command center. The enemy formation was brilliant. There were no gaps, no weaknesses to exploit. Any ship trying to break through would be destroyed by concentrated fire from multiple directions. Earth was trapped in a cage of steel and energy. General Nam called an emergency meeting. The reality was harsh. Earth could feed itself, but the colonies could not. Mars housed 3 million people. The asteroid settlements held another 2 million. Without supply ships from Earth, they would run out of food in 4 months. The outer colonies would starve even sooner. Worse news came from beyond the solar system. All 37 human colony worlds had been seized by coalition forces. 15 million humans were now prisoners. The coalition sent a message. They would release the prisoners if Earth surrendered. If Earth continued to resist, the prisoners would be sent to labor camps. They would be slaves for the rest of their lives. The message hit Earth like a hammer. Families wept for their captured relatives. Protests erupted in some cities. People demanded the government negotiate. How could they abandon 15 million humans to slavery? General Nam addressed the planet again. His voice was heavy with pain. He said every captured human was a citizen of Earth. Their suffering broke his heart. But surrender would condemn not just 15 million but all 11 billion humans on Earth. It would doom every future generation. They could not abandon the prisoners, but they could not surrender either. They must find another way. Admiral Kwan ordered guerrilla operations to begin. Human ships began launching hit-and-run attacks on the blockade. They would strike quickly and retreat before the enemy could respond. The goal was not to break the blockade, but to bleed it, to make the coalition pay a price for every day they stayed. Captain Yuna, recovered from her injuries, took command of a new destroyer called Relentless. She led raids on coalition supply convoys. Her tactics were vicious. She would hide her ship near the blockade, engines cold, waiting. When a supply ship passed, she would strike fast and disappear. The coalition learned to fear her. They called her the Ghost Captain, but the raids were costly. For every coalition ship destroyed, Earth lost ships too. Resources were running low. Ammunition was being rationed. Fuel was scarce. The blockade was working. Slowly, steadily. The coalition was crushing Earth's ability to fight. On Earth, life became harder. Food was rationed. Power was limited to certain hours. Factories worked day and night building weapons, but raw materials were limited. People waited in long lines for basic supplies. But there were no riots, no chaos. Humanity had chosen this path together, and they would walk it together. Dr. Minho worked frantically to build more Prometheus weapons. But each one required rare materials. The remaining devices numbered only 8, not enough to change the situation. He barely slept trying to find a solution. His assistants worried about his health, but he refused to rest. Too many people depended on his work. Ambassador Jiho provided the first ray of hope. His network of contacts within the coalition had been growing. Species who resented their masters quietly reached out to Earth. The Terran who built the coalition's ships sent technical data. The Kellen who maintained communication systems shared encryption codes. The Vrel, who worked in factories, began small acts of sabotage. Jiho spent hours every day in secret communication with these rebels. He learned that many species admired humanity's courage. For 12 million years, every race had submitted to the coalition. Earth was the first to say no. This simple act had sparked something in the minds of oppressed peoples across the galaxy. If humans could resist, maybe they could too. 4 months into the siege, disaster struck. A coalition assault team infiltrated Mars using captured human codes. They attacked the colony's life support systems. The attack was repelled, but not before significant damage was done. 300 colonists died. The rest were evacuated to emergency shelters. Mars was running out of time. Admiral Kwan made a painful decision. She ordered all colonists from Mars and the asteroid settlements to be brought to Earth. It would strain Earth's resources even more, but it was better than letting them die. The evacuation required running the coalition blockade. It would cost ships and lives. But there was no choice. Captain Yuna volunteered to lead the evacuation fleet. 20 transport ships would carry the colonists. 50 warships would escort them. Yuna's plan was bold. They would attack one section of the blockade with everything they had. While the coalition responded, the transports would slip through a different section. The operation began at dawn. Human warships attacked the blockade's northern section with suicidal intensity. They drove straight at the enemy, firing everything they had. The coalition pulled ships from other sections to reinforce. This created a temporary gap in the southern section. The transport ships raced through. 16 transports made it through. 4 were caught by coalition fire and destroyed. 8,000 colonists died in seconds. Yuna's warships broke off the attack and retreated. They had lost 23 ships, but they had saved 5 million people. In the mathematics of war, it was considered a victory, but to those who lost loved ones, it felt like defeat. That evening, Admiral Kwan received a private message on a secure channel. It was from a coalition officer. The message said her daughter was alive. She was being held in a prison facility near the coalition capital. The officer offered a deal. If Kwan surrendered Earth's military forces, her daughter would be freed. She would be returned safely to Earth. Kwan read the message 3 times. Her daughter. Alive. She had believed Hana was dead for 15 years. But she was alive somewhere in an alien prison. Kwan could save her. All she had to do was betray 11 billion people. She sat alone in her quarters for an hour. She looked at an old photograph of Hana as a child, smiling and happy. Tears ran down Kwan's face. She loved her daughter more than life itself. But she loved humanity too. And she had a duty that went beyond personal feelings. Kwan deleted the message without responding. Then she went to her bathroom and was sick. She cried until no more tears would come. Then she washed her face, straightened her uniform, and returned to the command center. Nobody ever knew about the message. She carried that burden alone. 5 months into the siege, supplies were critically low. Ammunition stocks were at 20%. Fuel reserves would last another month at most. Food was sufficient, barely, but only because of strict rationing. Medical supplies were almost gone. General Nam met privately with Admiral Kwan. He asked if they could win. She was honest. No, not with their current situation. They could fight for another 2 months, maybe 3. Then it would be over. Nam asked what would happen if they surrendered now. She said the coalition would probably accept. They had proven their point. Earth would become a subject world. Not destroyed, but controlled. Nam nodded slowly. He was considering it. Quan could see the weight on him. He was responsible for all humanity. Could he let 11 billion people suffer for the sake of pride? Before Nam could make a decision, Ambassador Jiho burst into the room. He carried a data device. His hands shook with excitement. He said his contacts had sent something incredible. Technical schematics from the Terran engineers. Complete plans for the Coalition's command and control systems. Quan and Nam studied the plans. What they saw changed everything. The Coalition's fleet coordination depended on central nexus stations. Every ship linked to these nexuses. The system allowed perfect coordination across thousands of ships. But it had a weakness. If the nexuses were destroyed, the fleet would lose its ability to coordinate. Ships would operate independently, losing their tactical advantage. There were 37 nexus stations throughout Coalition space. They were heavily defended and deep inside enemy territory. Reaching them would be almost impossible. Destroying them would require suicide missions. But if it worked, it would cripple the Coalition's military. Admiral Quan looked at the plans for a long time. Then she looked at General Nam. She said they had a chance. A small one, but real. They could strike at the heart of the Coalition. It would require using all their remaining Prometheus weapons. It would cost many lives. Most of the volunteers would not return. But if they succeeded, they could break the blockade and inspire rebellion across the galaxy. General Nam stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at Earth below, peaceful and beautiful. He thought about all the people depending on him. He thought about the prisoners in Coalition camps. He thought about humanity's future. Then he turned back and gave his answer. They would launch the attack. It was time to strike back. Would carry the Prometheus weapons to the Coalition's nexus stations. Each person knew this was a one-way mission. The quantum weapons would destroy everything within 50 kilometers, including the ships carrying them. These people were saying goodbye to life itself. Dr. Minho was among the volunteers. He had created these terrible weapons. He could not ask others to die for his invention without being willing to do the same. His team begged him not to go. Earth needed his brilliant mind. But Minho's decision was final. He would pilot one of the ships himself. Captain Yuna would lead the attack on the primary nexus near the Coalition capital. This was the most important target. It coordinated all other nexus stations. If it fell, the entire system would collapse. The defenses around it were massive. 100 warships guarded the station at all times. Yuna knew her chances of survival were nearly zero. She did not care. She would strike this blow for humanity or die trying. The plan was called Operation Prometheus Chain. All 37 teams would strike at the exact same moment. Simultaneous attacks across Coalition space. The quantum disruptions would cascade, multiplying each other's effects. It would blind the Coalition's military for hours, maybe days, long enough for Earth to break the blockade. Ambassador Jiho coordinated with rebel cells across the galaxy. When the nexus stations fell, oppressed species would rise up. Factories would stop working. Communication networks would shut down. Transport systems would fail. The Coalition's empire would face rebellion on hundreds of worlds simultaneously. The volunteers said their goodbyes. Some wrote letters to families. Others simply sat quietly making peace with their fate. Dr. Minho recorded a message for his research team. He told them the Prometheus technology must never be used again after this. Its cost was too high. He asked them to seal the research and forget how to build these weapons. Some knowledge, he said, was too dangerous to keep. The mission launched at midnight. 37 small ships left Earth secretly, moving in different directions. They used stolen Coalition identity codes and advanced stealth systems. Each ship carried a single Prometheus device and a pilot who would never come home. They slipped through the blockade one by one, vanishing into the darkness of space. It took 2 weeks for all the ships to reach their targets. During this time, they maintained total silence. No communications, no transmissions. The Coalition security forces focused on the blockade around Earth, did not notice the scattered threats moving through their territory. Captain Yuna reached the primary nexus first. She studied the defenses from a distance. 100 warships in perfect formation. Energy shields covering the station. Automated weapon platforms everywhere. It was impossible to approach without being detected. She would have to go straight in, fast and hard. and hoped to reach activation range before being destroyed. The designated time arrived. All across Coalition space, 37 human pilots moved toward their targets. They activated their engines and accelerated to maximum speed. Alarms began sounding at Coalition security centers. Unknown ships were attacking critical facilities. But the warnings came too late. Dr. Minho's target was a Nexus station in the outer territories. He pushed his engines beyond their limits, ignoring the warnings. Coalition fighters scrambled to intercept. Plasma bolts lit up space around his ship. One bolt grazed his hull and warning lights flashed red. He was losing atmosphere, but he was close enough now. Minho entered the activation code with steady hands. He thought of all the people who had died because of his invention. He thought of Tae Young, the first volunteer, and his family. He thought of all the volunteers following him into death today. He whispered an apology to them all. Then he activated the Prometheus device. The quantum field expanded. Reality broke apart. The Nexus station and the ships around it existed in multiple states simultaneously, solid and liquid, intact and destroyed, working and failed. Then the field collapsed. The station was gone. Minho was gone. Only debris remained. Captain Yuna drove straight at the primary Nexus. Coalition warships opened fire with everything they had. Her shields failed almost immediately. Plasma burned through her armor. Her ship was dying around her. But she was close enough. She could see the Nexus station on her screen. Massive and terrible. Her hand reached for the activation switch. A plasma bolt struck her cockpit. The explosion threw her against her restraints. Pain shot through her body. Blood filled her vision. But her hand found the switch. With her last strength, she pulled it. The primary Nexus exploded in impossible light. The quantum cascade was massive, affecting space for hundreds of kilometers. Every ship near it was destroyed instantly. The Coalition's central coordination vanished in a flash. Across the galaxy, other Nexus stations lost connection to their primary. The entire network collapsed. Of the 37 volunteer pilots, 12 survived their missions. Most were killed in the approach or during activation, but they had succeeded. Every targeted Nexus was destroyed. The Coalition's fleet coordination system was gone. Thousands of warships suddenly operated independently, without central command. Admiral Kwan watched the reports come in from Earth's command center. Tears ran down her face, but her voice was steady. She gave the order. Every remaining human ship would launch immediately. They would attack the blockade with everything they had. Without coordination, the Coalition fleet could be broken. The Battle of Earth began. 400 human warships emerged from hiding and struck the blockade from all sides. The Coalition forces, confused and uncoordinated, tried to respond. But without their Nexus system, they could not work together effectively. Human ships exploited every gap, every moment of hesitation. The fighting was brutal. Human ships rammed Coalition vessels when they ran out of ammunition. Damaged ships set themselves on collision courses with enemy carriers. It was not elegant warfare. It was desperate, savage, and costly. Earth lost half its remaining fleet, but the blockade broke. Across the galaxy, Ambassador Jiho's signal went out. Oppressed species saw that the mighty Coalition was vulnerable. The Terran shut down shipyards. The Kellan disabled communication systems. The Vrel walked away from their factories. On 100 worlds, rebellions began. The Coalition's leaders panicked. Their empire was falling apart. Fleets that were blockading Earth received emergency orders to return home. Their own worlds needed protection. The elder races had maintained control through overwhelming force. Now that force was scattered and confused, unable to suppress rebellions everywhere at once. General Nam watched Coalition ships begin withdrawing from the solar system. After 6 months of siege, the enemy was leaving, but there was no celebration in his heart. The casualty reports were devastating. 70,000 dead, 40% of Earth's military destroyed, 12 colony worlds lost, and 37 volunteers who gave everything. In the medical bay of a rescue ship, Captain Yuna opened her eyes. She was alive. Somehow, impossibly, she had survived. Her escape pod had ejected automatically just before her ship was destroyed. Coalition forces, confused by the Nexus collapse, had failed to pursue. A human rescue team found her drifting in space. The doctors told her she would recover. She had burns over 40% of her body, 3 broken ribs, a shattered arm, but she would live. When she heard this, Yuna began to cry, not from pain but from grief. She had been ready to die. She had expected to die. Now she had to live with the memory of all those who did not survive. Dr. Minho did not survive. His ship was completely destroyed. But his final message reached Earth. His research team followed his wishes. They sealed all Prometheus research in a secure vault. They erased the construction methods from computer systems. They swore an oath never to rebuild these weapons. The knowledge would remain locked away, a reminder of the terrible price of victory. The war did not end with a treaty or formal surrender. It simply stopped. The coalition could not control its rebellious territories and fight Earth at the same time. The elder races withdrew to their core systems. Their empire, built over 12 million years, had cracked. It would never be the same. Admiral Quan received word that prisoner camps were being liberated. Rebel forces across the galaxy were freeing captured humans. Among them was a woman named Hana. After 15 years, mother and daughter would be reunited. Quan sat alone in her quarters and finally allowed herself to feel hope. Earth had survived. Humanity had refused to submit, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. The elder races no longer seemed invincible. Freedom was no longer impossible. Other species looked at Earth and saw what courage could accomplish. The age of submission was ending. A new era was beginning. The first year after the war was the hardest. Earth had survived, but the scars ran deep. 40% of the military was gone. Cities held memorial services every week for the dead. Families mourned loved ones who would never return. The economic cost was staggering. Rebuilding would take decades. But humanity did not fall into despair. They had proven something important. They had faced the greatest empire in galactic history and refused to bow. That knowledge gave them strength. In every city, people worked together to rebuild. Resources were shared. Nobody was left behind. The unity forged in war carried into peace. General Nam oversaw the reconstruction efforts. He was older now, his hair completely white. The war had aged him. But he worked tirelessly. He established funds for families of the fallen. He ensured that veterans received care and honor. He created memorials in every major city, walls inscribed with the names of those who died defending freedom. His final act as chairman of the Defense Council was to sign new legislation. Military service would be entirely voluntary. No person would ever be forced to fight again. Those who chose to serve would do so knowing the risks and costs. Nam said freedom must be defended by those who choose to defend it, not those compelled by law. Admiral Quan retired from active military service. She was reunited with her daughter Hana, freed from a coalition prison camp. Their reunion was emotional. 15 years apart, 15 years of believing the other was dead. They held each other and wept. No words were necessary. They were together again. That was enough. But Quan did not disappear into private life. She accepted a new position as Earth's Secretary of Galactic Affairs. The galaxy was changing rapidly. New alliances were forming. Old power structures were collapsing. Earth needed someone who understood both military reality and diplomatic possibility. Quan was perfect for the role. Captain Yuna spent 6 months in recovery. Her injuries were severe, but she refused to accept medical retirement. She was promoted to admiral and given command of a new position, the Federation Mutual Defense Fleet. Other species who had rebelled against the coalition wanted to ensure their freedom would be protected. They asked Earth to help organize a defensive alliance. Yuna's flagship was named Defiant. It was built with technology shared between Earth and allied species. The Terran contributed advanced engines. The Kellan provided superior sensors. The Vrel manufactured the armor plating. It was a symbol of cooperation, different species working together as equals. Ambassador Jiho became the architect of a new galactic order. He proposed the Federation of Free Species. Every member would have equal voice. Decisions would be made democratically. Membership was voluntary. Any species could leave at any time. It was the opposite of the coalition's forced hierarchy. The Terran joined immediately. So did the Kellan and the Vrel. Within a year, 42 species had joined the Federation. Others watched cautiously. The elder races of the coalition, diminished but not destroyed, viewed the Federation with suspicion. But they did not attack. They were too busy dealing with internal problems. The coalition itself did not collapse completely. The elder races maintained control over their core territories. But their empire of subject species was gone. Hundreds of worlds declared independence. Some joined the Federation. Others formed their own alliances. A few chose isolation. The galaxy became more diverse, more chaotic, but also more free. 5 years after the war, something unexpected happened. A delegation from one of the elder races requested permission to address the Federation Council. They were a species called the Dran, ancient and proud. For 12 million years, they had been among the Coalition's ruling class. Now they stood before the Federation as petitioners. The Dran ambassador was old, even by their long-lived standards. He said his people had made mistakes. They had believed might gave them the right to rule. Earth had proven this belief wrong. Force could not control free minds forever. His people wished to join the Federation, not as masters but as equal members. The Federation Council debated for 3 days. Many members were angry. The Dran had oppressed their ancestors for millennia. How could they forgive? But Ambassador Jiho argued for acceptance. The Federation stood for freedom and equality. If they rejected species because of their past, they would become what they fought against. The vote was close, but the Dran were accepted. Their membership came with conditions. They must fully disclose their military capabilities. They must accept limitations on their fleet size. They must contribute to the Federation's humanitarian efforts. The Dran agreed to everything. They understood they were being given a chance at redemption. Over the following decades, more former Coalition species joined the Federation. Some joined eagerly. Others took years to overcome their distrust. But slowly, steadily, the Federation grew. It became a major power in the galaxy. Not through conquest, but through the voluntary association of free peoples. Earth was not the Federation's sole leader. Humans held no special status. The Federation Council included representatives from 200 species. Each had one vote. Decisions required majority agreement. It was messy and sometimes frustrating. Democracy always was, but it worked. Admiral Yuna commanded the Federation fleet for 20 years. She never forgot the cost of freedom. She drilled her forces constantly. She insisted on maintaining strong defenses. Some criticized her as too aggressive, but she remembered the Coalition's invasion. She remembered friends dying and burning ships. She would never allow another tyrant to threaten free peoples. When she retired at age 51, the Federation honored her with its highest medal. She accepted it quietly. She said she was just one of many who fought. The real heroes were those who did not return. She visited the memorial wall on Earth regularly, running her fingers over the names carved in stone. These people had died so others could live free. Ambassador Jiho lived to see the Federation encompass 300 worlds. He died peacefully at age 93, surrounded by friends from a dozen different species. His funeral was attended by representatives from across the galaxy. The eulogy was simple. He had helped build bridges between species. He had shown that cooperation was stronger than domination. Admiral Kwan served as Secretary of Galactic Affairs for 15 years. She negotiated treaties, resolved disputes, and always advocated for peaceful solutions. But she never forgot her military training. When violence was necessary, she did not hesitate. She understood that peace must sometimes be defended with force. She retired to spend time with her daughter and grandchildren. Hana had rebuilt her life after years in captivity. She married, had children, and became a teacher. She taught history to young students. She made sure they understood what their ancestors had fought for. Freedom was precious because it was fragile. Each generation must defend it in their own way. 50 years after Earth said no to the Coalition, the galaxy looked very different. The old empire was a shadow of its former self. The Federation had become the dominant power, but it ruled through cooperation, not force. Trade routes connected hundreds of worlds. Cultural exchange was common. Species learned from each other as equals. There were still conflicts. Pirates raided trade ships. Border disputes erupted. Some species preferred isolation and rejected contact. The galaxy was not perfect, but it was freer than it had been in 12 million years. And that freedom existed because one species refused to submit. Earth's influence spread not through conquest but through example. Other species looked at humanity and saw something worth emulating. The willingness to sacrifice for principles, the refusal to accept tyranny, the belief that all beings deserved freedom and dignity. These ideas spread like fire across dry grass. In the Federation's capital, a museum was built to commemorate the war. It displayed artifacts from the battles, damaged ship components, weapons used against the coalition, personal items from fallen soldiers. The centerpiece was a simple wall listing the names of all who died. 37 names were highlighted in gold, the volunteers who carried the Prometheus weapons. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see the museum. They wanted to understand how a small species defied an ancient empire. The answer was simple but profound. Humanity valued freedom more than survival. When forced to choose between slavery and death, they chose to fight. That choice inspired billions of beings to seek their own liberation. An old woman stood before the memorial wall one evening. Admiral Yuna was 81 now. Her hair was white, her body bent with age, but her eyes were still fierce. She traced the names on the wall, remembering faces, friends who died beside her, volunteers who never returned, Dr. Minho, who created weapons he hated because they were necessary. A young student approached her. He recognized her from history books. He asked if the war was worth it. So many dead, so much suffering. Could anything justify that cost? Yuna looked at him for a long moment. Then she asked him a question in return. What would his life be like if Earth had surrendered? The boy thought about it and realized he would not be free to choose his own path. He would be a slave controlled by others. Yuna nodded. She said the war was terrible. Every death was a tragedy. She would carry the memory of those losses until her own death. But yes, it was worth it. Freedom was always worth fighting for.